What's going on, everybody? I'm here to do a review for the movie House of Gucci. Now, this was not a movie that was on my radar when I first learned about it, even when they were starting to make the movie, even up to when I saw the first trailer. But it took me a couple watches of that first trailer to say, you know what, this movie actually might be pretty interesting. And then by the time the second trailer came out, I said, okay, I'm sold. I want to see what this movie is all about, especially since of the cast that they do have in this movie. They have an all-star cast. You have Lady Gaga, Adam Driver, Jared Leto, Al Pacino, Salma Hayek, and Jeremy Irons. I believe that's pretty much rounding out like the entire lead and supporting cast for this film. So basically, House of Gucci, which I actually found out at the end credits of this movie, is an adaptation of a book called House of Gucci, which is about this woman by the name of Patrizia Reggiani, played by Lady Gaga, who basically is a woman who works for her father's trucking business. Just a regular person, everyday person. She doesn't come from wealth or anything like that. Just one day ends up going to a party with one of her friends, and she ends up meeting someone she thinks is a bartender, but it actually turns out to be Maurizio Gucci, who is the nephew to the uncle of Gucci, who is the, I guess you can say, CEO, pretty much the person who runs the empire that is known as Gucci. Now, mind you, this is back in the late 70s when Gucci was still, I would say, at its early stages. It wasn't where it is as we know it is at today, as this major empire where the name is very recognizable. It's a company that started out in Italy. It's an Italian brand, and then it became pretty much worldwide. More so, I would say in the 90s is probably when it hit its peak and then really kind of pushed itself forward. So she basically meets him. She thinks it's a bartender. It turns out that he is, much more, because she hears that last name, and all of a sudden she becomes even more, I guess you can say, enamored with who he is, not really knowing anything about him. And then when I can tell by body language and how she was acting that she was really interested more so in the name rather than being with the man himself. But then eventually, as they start to develop more of a relationship, she starts to become more enamored with who he is as a man and more less than of the name, while still in the back of her mind realizing that this could be her ticket out of where it is that she's at. Mind you, she's not poor. Like, she's not like a bum or anything like that, but she strives to want to have more. She wants the wealth. She wants the power. She just wants the name. That's pretty much all she really wants. And then, in comes Jeremy Irons' character, who plays Maurizio's father. He meets her and everything like that, just kind of gets a vibe for who she is. But he can tell right off the bat, after just asking her a few questions, that she does not seem like she's there for love or for who he is or for his son. And he basically tries to tell her, like, you can F her, you can court her, you can date her, you can do whatever you want with her, but whatever you do, do not marry her, because she's in essence going to be the death of you. And I feel like this isn't really like a spoiler, but he kind of foreshadowed that, because that actually did, happen. This is a true story, so it's really not so much of a spoiler unless you never knew the backstory behind what actually did happen later on in their relationship. So, they get together and everything like that. He ends up falling for her hard. This guy literally gave up being a Gucci for a little bit and downgraded his life to be with this woman who he had only known for just a short amount of time. Like, he fell head over heels for a woman he barely even knew. And I said, I don't think that's a good idea. And sure enough, it wasn't. He ends up kind of dropping his brand or his name as a Gucci to downgrade his life, move in with her and her family. He says, because I'll do whatever it takes for me to, prove myself as a man in order to marry your daughter. I said, as noble as that is, that probably wasn't the best idea, but he ends up doing it. He ends up working for her father's job, for her father's trucking company. And, one thing leads to another, and then boom, they end up getting married. So that's pretty much how that happened. Then now she's even more immersed into the life of being a Gucci now, because she's married into the family. You know, he takes her around the other family members, and this is where Al Pacino's character comes in. Al Pacino plays his uncle. He's the one who pretty much runs the Gucci empire, along with his son, played by Jared Leto. And let me say, Jared Leto, one thing I like about him as an actor is that he literally loses himself in every role that he does, especially roles that causes him to wear a lot of prosthetic makeup and stuff like that, and to the point where people don't even recognize that it's him until you have to really look at his face or hear his voice. And he definitely was the comedic relief of the movie. Like, almost everything that he did was pretty much a funny thing, but there were even some things where he was being funny where you actually felt bad for him, because Jared Leto's character, who played Paolo Gucci, was pretty much the black sheep of the family. He always tried to prove himself, but no one took him seriously. No one took any type of designs he had seriously. No one took him seriously as a person who can contribute rightfully to the company. Everybody thought Maurizio would be the better person to run, you know, their portion of the company, because no one took anything that he did seriously. And a lot of times that's why he was often walked over or looked over. His own dad, played by Al Pacino, called him an idiot several times in the movie. Jeremy Irons' character didn't take him seriously, because it was a scene where he brought some designs to him and saying, he says, do not ever show anybody these designs because someone will probably take it. And then, of course, he was just being sarcastic with it. He's like, no one's going to take this seriously because look at the colors. No one wants to wear that. Like, that's dumb and that's foolish. He said, if there's one thing me and your dad agree on is that you're incompetent. And in that moment, you felt bad for him. It's like he really wanted to prove himself, but he just didn't have that spark. He didn't have that drive. He didn't have that true push to actually really push some things out there. It's almost like he was just there to be a court jester. That's pretty much how they treated his character throughout the entire movie, until the Patrizia character pretty much said, you know, he likes me. I can talk to him. Maybe I can do something for him. But, you know, she's really cutthroat. So she really wasn't trying to help him in any way. She was really trying to help herself. Like, this character that Lady Gaga played was probably one of the most cutthroat characters I've ever seen on screen. I'm just being completely honest. And this is how she was in real life. Like, this is who she really was. She's playing a real person. This is who she was. If this is what we saw on screen, I can only imagine how she was in real life. I bet she was worse. But that was pretty much Jared Leto's character. Like, I always went through Al Pacino's character. Like I said, he was the person who ran Gucci. But it's almost like he ran Gucci the way that he wanted it to, but Gucci wasn't really getting to the places that it needed to be, because he ran it in an old-fashioned sort of way. And while every other brand was starting to come behind them and surpass them, Gucci was staying in a spot where it was neutral, where it had no room to grow. It was no growth. It was no fire. It was no passion behind it, because it kept being ran like a machine from the industrial age, and it was not moving towards where it could see a brighter future. And see, the thing is about the Patrizia character is that she had a vision. She wanted to see Gucci go to certain places, but she executed it the wrong way. She was a little too pushy and a little too aggressive. Like, for example, it was a scene in the movie where they had to go to New York, you know, and oversee Gucci in New York. And then it was a scene where she's bringing their daughter back from, I forgot where they were at, but she brought them back, I guess, from shopping or whatever the case may be. And she saw a handbag on the counter, and she was like, she called out to her maid, and she was like, what type of bag is this? She said, oh, it's a Gucci bag. Now, mind you, it didn't look like the typical Gucci bag that she was used to seeing, or people who went to the Gucci store were used to seeing. You know, the Gucci bags had a certain look to it. It didn't even have I don't think it even had the Gucci logo on there, but she said it was a Gucci bag. And then all of a sudden she just, you know, it cuts to a scene where she's going out and she's going to like the slums of New York, and she sees Gucci handbag, $29.99. Now, you know, that's not a real Gucci handbag if it costs $30. That's not real. Like, there's a couple of digits missing there for at least, you're probably missing at least 1 or 2 digits from the price tag. If you see a Gucci bag that costs that much, that costs that little bit of money, is that cheap. She brings it back and she shows it in front of her husband, Maurizio, and she was like, do we really want our name on junk, like on this trash right here? Like, so basically, she did not like the fact that Gucci was having bootleg products, but at the same time, he didn't seem to mind it. The uncle didn't seem to mind it either, but she had an issue with that. And I could understand and see where she was coming from. Like, you are supposed to be this big brand, and you have no problem with your Gucci products, some of your big products, being laid out on the street and being bootlegged like this, and you don't want to do anything about it. Like, you don't want to push anything to be the best that it could possibly be. Like, this is the best that you think that you're gonna have, and you think that this is all that we're worth, and that's not right. So in that aspect, I can see where she's coming from, but like I said, she was just ruthless at the same time and more aggressive with it. Now, when it came to the Salma Hayek character, I didn't know what kind of character she was going to be based on the trailers that I was looking at, but she basically played like I guess you can say the advisor to the Patrizia character. Like, she was a woman she saw doing tarot card readings, and she just one day called and just asked her about her future, and she basically told her some things, but they ended up building a bond to the point where they actually started meeting in person. And then who would have thought that later on in the movie she would play a very intricate part to a major part of this movie happening, or a very extreme thing that would eventually go on to happen in this movie. And it's just wild how cutthroat this actually is. I actually think that there were really no good guys in this movie. I think everybody in this movie was really undercutting, cutting throat, stabbing in the back, being greedy. I think greed was like one of the major parts of this movie. Was definitely greed, which of course you know is one of the 7 deadly sins. And everybody at one point started to be out for themselves, some more than others. And it's just crazy how all of that happened. Like, the Paolo character, he undercut his own dad thanks to some whispers in the ear from Patrizia to try, because of tax evasion and tax fraud and all types of stuff. He ended up doing a year in prison behind that. Then they set him up. Maurizio and Patrizia set Paolo up because with some stuff for his line that he did not have the copyright owns to, because it was still under the Gucci brand. So he ended up getting his whole fashion show shut down and ran out by the police. And he ended up, going into poverty. Patrizia, she was the most cutthroat of them all. Maurizio, you would think he's the good guy, but then when you see how dirty he actually did Patrizia at the end, even though she kind of deserved it, he started to get big in his own head to the point where he was starting to lose control. Like I said, there was really no good guys in this movie because everybody undercut someone somehow, some way, and was cutthroat somehow, some way, backstabbing. I mean, like, you name it, they probably did it. And it's crazy when you look at it and play out on screen that you would think that a name like Gucci, you would never expect something like that to go on in the background. But believe it or not, a lot of these businesses and a lot of these big companies have all of that going on to this day, and you will never know unless you actually was around the people and saw things going on in inner workings and inner weavings in and out of these companies. But like I said, nobody, in my opinion, was a saint in this movie. Like, you would think at one point you might be rooting for somebody, and then it's like, I gotta fall back on them, and it's like, just wow. It's like, and then some characters did a complete 180. Some you already knew going into it that they were going to be bad and terrible and whatnot. But it's just, it's crazy how all of this just really played out. Now, I feel like what I'm about to say is not really a spoiler because, like I said, it is a true story. Patrizia, she went the extra mile and ended up having her husband killed. Like Maurizio Gucci, she had him killed back in the 97. She had him assassinated, like right there, shot in the back. And I think in the head. I'm not sure if it was a headshot or not because I couldn't tell by the camera. But she had him assassinated mainly because he ended up moving on with another woman. He hit her with some alimony papers, some divorce papers. She couldn't handle it. She really wanted to be back with him. It was at that moment where you kind of felt bad for her, but it's like you can't really feel too bad for her because look at all the stuff. She literally single-handedly came in there and practically almost destroyed not only the Gucci brand, but almost broke up the entire family because of her own selfish wants, needs, desires, and greed. That's why I said she was the most cutthroat person in the entire story. And then she felt in her mind, in her heart, that she did nothing wrong. I'm like, she felt like she had to serve no accountability for anything that she did when she was like one of the main tools that was, one of the main wrenches that was thrown into what was possibly a well-oiled machine. Even though like I said, she had her own ways of going about things. It's just the way that she went about it that was just completely wrong. Like the execution was horrible. It was horrific. But she just felt like she had no accountability to take in it at all. It's almost like she wanted to go into victim mode. She wanted people to feel bad for her, but no one can feel bad for her. As a matter of fact, I saw an interview Lady Gaga did when they said that the actual real Patrizia Reggiani, because she's still alive, she's still in prison, wanted to reach out to her to talk to her about the role. And Lady Gaga says she turned it down because she says, knowing what I know about her now, why would I want to talk to her? I can get the research and the resource material about this character from other means that are legit, that I don't have to go straight to the actual person and actually speak with her about it. And I can't even fault her for doing that, because I wouldn't want to talk to somebody who had their husband assassinated, or anybody that, you know, that did something that ruthless. And she had the nerve at the end of the movie to, when they call her name by Miss Reggiani, to say, I prefer to call myself Patrizia Gucci. Like, she actually said that. Like, she felt like she still had rights to that name, which she definitely did not. Like, by that time, she's going back to her maiden name, but she couldn't handle it. She's like, no, I'm going to go by this name, and I'm continue going by this name even after all of the stuff that she did. But when it was all said and done, she ended up going to jail for like 29 years. The person who actually went out with the assassination, he went to jail for life. The Pina woman, she did like 26. The other guy did like 25. So I think she went to jail in 99. So 2019, that's 20 years. So she's got about less than 10 years. Let's put it that way. She got less than 10 years left in jail. She'll probably be out in like 2028 or something like that. It'll be before 2030. I will say that. That's when she's due to be out of jail. And one thing I saw at the end credits that they posted is they said there's currently nobody with the Gucci name that runs anything at Gucci. Nobody. That means everybody who runs something at Gucci, no matter what kind of big board executive position that it is, there is nobody over there with the Gucci name. Maurizio and Patrizia did have one daughter. I think they said her name was Alexandra, but she's not really running over there. I don't know if she still has the last name Gucci. She probably should, if she, because that's her dad. But they said nobody who's running Gucci today has the Gucci name. It is ran by other people. They said that the estimated net worth of Gucci today is about $60 billion. That's a lot of money. But yeah, it was a pretty, decent movie. They're already talking about some Oscar buzz going around for Lady Gaga playing this part. And I kind of figured that it was when I was looking at the trailer, that they're going to try to push to see if she can get that lead actress nomination. Now, that would be interesting to see it between her and Jennifer Hudson for Respect playing Aretha Franklin, because you have two biopics, both leading characters. So we'll see what the turnout is when it comes to that. I could possibly see the movie probably getting some more nominations elsewhere, definitely probably in the costume design, because they definitely did capture the essence of the time period as well as the fashion that they were wearing, especially for people of a high class society, such as those who were able to afford wearing Gucci. Now, there was a couple of issues that I did have with the movie, with some of the way that they edited it. It's almost like sometimes they would do a scene and then boom, they would jump and they would be in some other location that just didn't feel like it fit right. It's almost like some of the scenes didn't feel complete and they just jumped right to another one. I wish another thing they would have did is that when they were going from different places, that they would tell us on the screen where they were at, instead of us having to guess or wait until later to find out where they were at, or maybe a certain year that happened and popped up. Like, they didn't really put like cards here or little titles here. Oh, this is the year here. We're here. We just kind of had to guess. So I wish they would have did something like that. But all in all, it was a fairly decent movie. If you want to see something, a family that is cutthroat with each other and greedy and just downright despicable to each other, this is probably the movie for you. But that's pretty much my review for House of Gucci. Y'all let me know what y'all think. Is this a movie that you'll want to see? Is it a movie that you'll pass on? Down in the comments, and I'll talk to you in the next one.